Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Chris and this is my shop partner Oots, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to build a straight line guide for your circular saw. Now several years ago when my grandpa passed away, I lost access to my wood shop and I had to start from scratch. I couldn't afford a table saw or one of those fancy track saws, so I built a straight line guide for my circular saw and I was able to accomplish a lot with just that. We'll show some of those different techniques in this video. Now, Lowe's sent me this DEWALT cordless saw for a recent desk build that I just finished, and I put it through its paces. It was hugely powerful, very impressed. So I wanted to make a designated video showing you how I used that straight line guide on that project. So thank you Lowe's for sending me this saw and sponsoring this video. There's a link to this saw down in the description. Let's get building that straight line guide. To make this jig, I bought a 2 foot by 4 foot 1/4 inch sheet of birch plywood from Lowe's. You can also make an 8 foot guide if you buy a full sheet. Now the factory edge on plywood is typically very straight and I'm going to use that to my advantage. First I'm going to rip about a 3-inch wide strip off because we're going to use that factory edge later on. Then I'm going to measure over about 1/2 inch wider than the distance from the circular saw's blade to the edge of the saw base and strike a line there. This will be where I'll place the straight factory edge of that 3-inch strip. Then I'll strike a line on the other side of that strip and cut that off with the saw. Next I'm going to glue the 3-inch strip to that wider strip and clamp it down. Once the glue dries, I'll remove the clamps, secure the guide to my workbench. You can use sawhorses or any surface, and then I'll run the saw along the guide, registering the base to that straight factory edge. And this will remove that extra 1/2 inch that I added earlier on, giving me a perfect straight, zero clearance edge. Then I'll just knock any splinters off with a little bit of sandpaper. Alright, so I want to give a couple quick tips for when you're using these straight edge guides. If this is the piece that you want to keep on this side of the straight edge guide, then you're going to need to add an 1/8 of an inch or whatever the thickness of your saw blade is, because if you bring this straight to your line, say you want a 24-inch long piece, you measure 24 inches, strike your line, and you bring the straight edge guide right up to it, you're going to end up cutting away that thickness of the blade and be shy. For me, it's about 1/8 of an inch. If this side is the side that you're going to keep, then you can measure that 24 inches, drop your straight edge guide right on that line, make your cut, and you're going to be fine. So just keep that in mind when you're making your cuts. Whichever side you're keeping, you need to adjust your measurements. The reason I'm using 1/4 inch plywood is to give myself maximum depth of cut, and also so the 3-inch strip isn't too tall that it interferes with the saw motor. On the desk build I recently did, I used this guide and saw to cut the ends of the slab to length, and I had no problem whatsoever cutting through that 1.5 inch thick slab. I was actually really surprised at how powerful the saw was. Cherry burns really easy, so if the saw is underpowered and going too slow, it'll burn that cherry. This saw didn't slow down at all. I gave a really nice clean cut and there was no burning whatsoever. Next I'm going to show you a little bit more from that desk build. Alright, so now we're going to work on the case for the drawers. Now I have a really nice piece of cherry veneered plywood. I got this at my local hardwood dealer, and the nice face is down because the way a circular saw blade works, it's going to leave a better cut on the underside. I also added a nicer blade than what comes with the saw, and that really helps a lot in avoiding tear out. So we're going to cut all of our pieces for this frame. We're going to add some dados for the frame dividers to sit into, and then throw this thing together before we start working on drawers. Now to cut all the pieces I need, I simply measure them out, then I'll strike a line with my square, clamp the guide dead on that line, and make my cut. With bigger pieces, I'll support the cutoff with a sawhorse while I complete the cut. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to make dados and rabbets using the circular saw and the straight edge guide. Now I need my rabbets to be 1/4 of an inch deep, so I have a scrap piece of material that's 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to set it underneath my straight edge guide, put my circular saw on that, and adjust the blade so that it's touching this tabletop. Then when I make my cuts with the circular saw, I know they're going to be that 1/4 inch that I need. So let's get started. For something like rabbets, I'll use the actual board to measure where I need to make my cut. I'll clamp the straight edge guide on that mark, make a cut, move the guide over the thickness of the blade, and keep making passes until I remove all the material. Then I can just take a chisel and clean up the bottom of that cut. Alright, in order to get the proper width dado, I make my first cut using the straight edge guide. Then I'm going to bring one of my drawer dividers over and drop it in so that the edge of the board catches the edge of that saw curve. Get about as vertical as I can before it slips out. I'll bring my clamp over, clamp it into place. This board's a little bit warped, so I'll come around and do it to that side. Now that I know my dado will be the proper width, I'll make the cut on the other side, and then I'll go through and remove the waste in the middle. I always like to show people that you don't need a lot of fancy and really expensive tools to accomplish anything. So if you're just starting out or even an experienced woodworker, a circular saw and a straight edge guide are super useful tools, and you can accomplish a lot, including some pretty nice casework. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned some stuff. I hope you learned some tips on how to use that straight edge guide and really get a lot out of a circular saw. It's not just for carpentry or construction work. You can really do some fine woodworking with it. So, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the video. Leave me a comment down in the comment section on any other tips you have for circular saws or using a straight edge guide like that. So we'll see you on the next video. If you haven't watched that desk video yet, I'll have a link to that here at the top of the screen as well as in the description. See you next time.